Okay, Rabbi Say, let's do it. We're going to have some fun today with the halachas of vaccines. Is it a Chiyuv to vaccinate? Is it an Issur to vaccinate? Is it a Rishus? So let's get started. I don't have my notes, so hopefully this works. I'll do it from the top of my head. Okay, Rabbi Say. So 2 disclaimers that I want to throw out there off the bat. First disclaimer is, I probably will insult some people here, and sorry. Second disclaimer is that this is a sugya that I want to learn like a sugya. So a lot of decisions in life people make based on emotions, and I want to try to learn up a sugya and use halachic reasoning like we use by every other sugya. Just like we usually use halachic reasoning, let's do it here as well. Okay, let's get started with a little bit of a background in the potential chiyuv of keeping healthy. So is there a chiyuv? Is there a mitzvah to keep healthy? So, there is 2 psukim that are commonly thrown around. V'nishmartem oidas nafshes sheichem and rak hishar melacha. Now those 2 psukim, it happens to be true, the Rambam uses those psukim to teach that there is a chiyuv to get danger away from yourself and to keep healthy. However, the real truth is that Rov Rishonim say those are referring to your nefesh, ruchnius. Those are not about your physical body. Those are staying away, getting rid of spiritual dangers. That is Rov Rishonim, and the Rambam uses it for physical, but Rov Rishonim say that is referring to spiritual dangers. Okay, so what is the pasuk that Rov Rishonim used to teach you the mitzvah of staying healthy? They learned it out from the sugya of Makkah. You have a chiyuv of building a fence around your roof. Don't leave danger that you could just fall off the roof. As the pasuk says, Lo yisalmad al da'am re'echa. So don't stand by and let your friend die. Lo yisalmad al da'am re'echa. So therefore, you have to build a fence, and the poskim take this Issur deraisa of Lo Yisama Adam Re'echa, and they apply it to other things. For example, you can't have a kelev ra b'soich beisa. You can't have the type of dangerous animals. You can't keep them around, because by keeping them around, you are going to cause potential danger. So this applies in all over the place, whatever is dangerous. As the Rambam explains, and the Shulchan Aruch will go like this, that there is a Issur asay. There's a mitzvah asay to get rid of the dangerous sakanas nefashos things from in front of you, and there is a Issur lav if you do not get rid of it. So, what are the different levels of keeping your health? So, the way that the Rambam lays it out is there is, when it comes to things that are very dangerous, sakanas nefashos, so that there is a mitzvah deraisa and an Issur lav deraisa of getting rid of the things that are very dangerous. When it comes to things that are medium level dangerous, so then there is a Issur d'Rabbanan. What are the examples? The examples are, you should not drink water at night that you cannot see what's in the water, or you should not drink water without checking to see if there's any infestation or who knows what in the water. And you should not drink water that is left galoi, because maybe snake venom went into the water. So these are Issurei d'Rabbanan that are based on, we'll call it mediocre level health concerns. Then, as the Rambam says, in Hilchos Deos, the Rambam says that one has to keep healthy. You have to protect your health, because without your health, you cannot properly serve Hashem. So therefore, you must keep healthy in order to be able to serve Hashem. It's unclear whether that's a mitzvah in the pure sense, or is that like good eitzah, good advice of what to do. I don't know exactly. The Ma'aseh in Mishnah Torah, so I guess we could call it a halacha, that one has to stay healthy. Now, there's also a Gemara. Once again, can't quote the Marmar claims exactly who they are because I don't have my notes in front of me. But there's a Gemara that says in Shabbos, "Ein soimchu al nes." You're not allowed to rely on a nes and just say Hashem's gonna protect me. Rather, you have to stay away from a mokim sakana. However, mitzad sheni, we see multiple Gemaras that have this concept. I'll quote one, for example. It's a Gemara in Shabbos or Yuma. Now I don't remember anymore. Shabbos, I think, also. It says one should bloodlet either on Sunday, Wednesday, or Friday. What's pshat Sunday, Wednesday, or Friday? Well, Monday and Thursday, that's out of the question. Because those are Yemei Din. And on a Yemei Din, you don't want to go and bloodlet, think something goes wrong. You don't want a harsh judgment against you. Tuesday, you can't bloodlet. Why? Mazolis. There's something with mazolis on Tuesday, and therefore, if there's bad mazolis or whatever, therefore you cannot bloodlet. What about, wait a second, if we're concerned about bad mazolis, then the Gemara asks, how could you bloodlet on Friday? Friday also has bad mazolis, so how are you going to be allowed to bloodlet on Friday? The Gemara answers, well, since everybody bloodlets on Friday, shomer pesoyim Hashem. Since that's commonplace that everybody bloodlets on Friday, shomer pesoyim Hashem guards the foolish ones, and therefore, even though it's a theoretical sakana because it's bad mazalis, but that you're allowed to do because everybody does it. By the way, derech agav, I was just thinking, and I give blood every once in a while, so Sunday and Wednesday are the days to give. Fine. Chayra, right? Okay, I didn't see it brought in the Shulchan Aruch, but it's Gemara. Fine.
But if you're donating.
So if you're donating, from your standpoint, what's the difference? You're letting blood out of your body. Maybe. You should follow up with that. I'm not saying it's Issur to do it the other days, but I'm saying there's a Maila. Fine. Weiter. So where do we apply these principles? When do we say something is shomer pesoyim Hashem, it's mutter? When do we say no, it's it's too dangerous? So there's a famous Chiyuv from Rav Moshe, 1981. A doctor asked him, "Is it Issur to smoke?" Now some people like this Chiyuv very much. So whatever he's going to say, there's going to be somebody that's going to like it, right? So Zat Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe says, "Listen. You're a doctor. You see all the people that have medical issues that are coming to you, and therefore it looks like it's so bad. But the high majority of people that are smoking seem to be walking around unaffected. And since the high majority of people seem unaffected, it's no different than eating unhealthy food, which we see most people who are eating unhealthy food, they seem to be doing okay. And therefore, shomer pesoyim Hashem. Therefore, we can't answer smoking just like we can't answer donuts, and therefore, we're not gonna answer it, and we're not gonna answer it. And however, it's definitely the right thing is not to smoke, and certainly B'nai Torah obviously shouldn't smoke, but I can't answer it because shomer pesoyim Hashem. Lots of people are doing it. And it doesn't seem to be that's the high majority, or it seem to be doing fine. By the way, derech agav, the Rav Moshe camp, the Rav Moshe Mishpacha claims, and it seems pretty logical from the wording of the Ikras Moshe, if Rav Moshe had the medical knowledge of today, he wouldn't say the heter that he gave in 1981. That's what they claim. Now, is it true? Is it not true? Fight about it. Yeah, but that's what apparently the Rav Moshe camp claims. Because once again, you see his reasoning is the high majority of people aren't affected. Is that true? Is it not true? Look at your statistics, dahak, whatever, tzarchim. But that's the facts. Okay, so that is what we see that is not considered to be a Issur. Another interesting thing, Rav Moshe was asked about taking the Dar Yisharim test to see if somebody is a carrier for Tay-Sachs or some other disease, in order to see if they're going to have issues. It gets married, because for Tay-Sachs you need to both be carriers. Both the man and the woman need to be carriers to give over Tay-Sachs. So, is it kedai to take the test? The question was more focused on should we play God? Is it the wrong thing to play God and take the test? Or is that Hashem? Is that Tam Hashem Lakecha? It's Hashem's business. It's not my business. So Rav Moshe says, since it's an easy test, it's just taking a little blood, no big deal. It's kedai to do that to prevent further issue in the future. Okay. Next question is like this. Am I allowed to? I'll do it like this actually. I'm not sure which order I should go. I don't remember how I planned this out, but let's go like this. Am I allowed to go? Start with first Yisrael. Okay, so we're going to start off talking about a little bit of the history of vaccines, how it originally started. Doesn't mean that today's vaccines are the same thing as the historical one, but let's start with a background. The original first vaccine was created by Edward Jenner in 1796. It was against the smallpox disease. The smallpox was something that was ripping through Europe, and when it hit a town, 10 to 30% of the town usually got affected by smallpox, and depending on the scenario, usually 10 to 30% of those people would die. So usually when it hit a town, you have like 3% or 6% or 8% of the town getting wiped out by the smallpox. So it was an absolutely devastating disease. And even from the people that survived the smallpox, a lot of them had problems that they lived with for many years. So this fellow Edward Jenner, he came up with the concept of vaccine, which is taking a little bit of the disease, exposing it to a person. The body learns how to fight the disease and builds up what they call antibodies. And then they're able, when the real disease in full force comes, they are much more likely to be able to fight the disease. And that's the basic concept of the original type of vaccine. I know there's 3 types of vaccines. There's live vaccine, there's dead vaccine, there's mRNA or whatever it is vaccine. There's multiple things, but this is the original, yeah? Fine. So the vvarious Issur was asked right away, is one allowed to vaccinate? Okay, because 1 in 1,000 people that took the smallpox vaccine died. So is one allowed to? Is one allowed to go and put themselves into a danger, a sakana rechoika, to save himself from put himself in a sakana right now in order to save himself from a much more serious future sakana? Is that allowed? So the vvarious Yisrael explains like this. There is a Hagayas Maimonides. Let's start from the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef brings the Hagayas Maimonides, who quotes the Yerushalmi, who says that one is mechuyev to put himself in a small sakana to save somebody else from a big sakana. So let's say somebody else is in a big sakana, but I can put myself into a small sakana to potentially save his life who's in a big sakana. Does one have to do that? So the Beis Yosef quotes the Hagayas Maimonides, B'Shem Yerushalmi, that one has to do that. Now, where's the Yerushalmi? So the Yerushalmi seems to be, there's no first Yerushalmi like this, but they say there's a Yerushalmi where Ami was captured by cannibals. Now, when you get captured by cannibals, you don't have a very good life expectancy. But I guess they were still in the time of fatting him up, maybe, I don't know. And Rish Lakish, who was what do they call it? The professional fighting? MMA? Whatever. So Rish Lakish, who was one of these like MMA type of guys, from his bandit days. So he decided to risk his life and save Rav Ami. And he managed to somehow save Rav Ami. I don't know the exact details. And Rish Lakish brought back Rav Ami. He put himself into a Makom Sakana in order to save Rav Ami's life. So that's the story in Yerushalmi that we're based on. Now, however, this halacha, putting yourself into a safek risk to save somebody who's in real pekuach nefesh, complete risk, so that halacha is not brought in the Rambam, it's not brought in the Torah, it's not brought in the Shulchan Aruch, it doesn't make it. Because the chayra, it seems like the halacha, the Shulchan Aruch does not pass in this way. We go like the shita that we see in Yuma, for example, which says, we know the famous din, chayecha koidim l'chayei chavercha. Your life goes first. So therefore, if we paskin like the Bavli, seemingly that chayecha koidim, so therefore I am not mechuyev to put myself into risk to save somebody else. So it's the psak of the Bavli seemingly is I do not have to put myself into suffix sakana to save somebody else. Zak back to the ddiscusses Yisrael, and ddiscusses Yisrael says like this: the whole reason why I don't have to put myself in suffix sakana to save somebody else is because of the pasuk chayecha koydem. But with this original smallpox vaccine, I am putting myself in small sakana to save myself from big sakana. There's no chayecha koydem that tells me not to do it. So therefore, everybody would agree to take the vaccine. And then he adds with this funny line, and therefore it's mutter to take the vaccine. Now there was just a twist there, which is very hard to read the ddiscusses Yisrael, because the logic seems to flow to say, therefore everybody would agree that you're chayiv to take the vaccine. And therefore he answers the question, therefore it's mutter to take the vaccine. Now I saw different poskim quote the ddiscusses Yisrael, and I saw some poskim quote the ddiscusses Yisrael that he would say it's a chiyuv to take the vaccine, and I saw other poskim quote the ddiscusses Yisrael and saying it's mutter to take the vaccine. I actually don't know I'm in Suffolk, what conclusion to get from that ddiscusses Yisrael. Fine, let's take it through the generations. So we have, after the ddiscusses Yisrael, we have the Zivchei Tzedek, who says early 1800s. He says he said you should take the vaccine, but he says it's not a chiyuv.
Talking about smallpox still.
Smallpox. We have the what's his name? Early 1900s, Rabbi Abdullah. What's his name? I forgot what he is. Or somebody Svardish Paisik. I forgot what he says. He also writes. He says nowadays. Oh, I forgot one thing. There's another point that is said. What if another din that if there is a plague that comes to your city, Zak the Ramah, run away to a different city. The Ramah says run away to a different city, and don't wait to the end until it's entrenched in the city. Go right by the beginning, run away. Now one might argue that will spread the disease, but whatever. The Ramah says run away to a different city. The Shla actually says run away to the countryside. If you're in a dense city and a plague hits, run to the countryside. So Zakt, this Svarish Paisik that I can't remember his name in the early 1900s, says nowadays that we have the vaccines, you take the vaccine, and even if the plague comes, you don't have to run to the countryside like the Shla. I thought it was interesting that Svarish Paisik, quoting the Shla, he said you don't have to run to the countryside like the Shla says, because now we have the vaccines. The Kaf HaChaim, mid-1900s, he also same thing. You don't have to run away when a plague comes because we have the vaccine. Okay, that was talking about smallpox, and that was the general flow of the poskim. Now, a little bit more about danger, which I want to just throw in there about putting yourself in danger. For what do you have to do? So who was it again? I had it in my head a second ago. Okay. The Rabaz. The Rabaz says that if something is... Do I have to put myself in danger to save somebody else? I just want to throw this in because I forgot that before. If it's a minute danger, I have to put myself in danger. I'm chayiv midaraisa to put myself in danger to save somebody else. As the pasuk says, Lo yisam adam riyacha. If it is a minimal danger, right? I am not mechuyev to put myself in danger. However, it's midas chasidus to put myself in danger. If it's a major danger, then I have zero. I'm not meant to put myself in danger if it's major danger. And the Sefer Chasidim says that if you see a heavy guy drowning, and to go save him when you're likely going to go down with him, trying to save him because it's a very difficult thing, that is a shoyta chassid. A chassid shoyta. That's not the right thing to do. You're not supposed to do that because you're not supposed to kill yourself while trying to save somebody else. That is what the Sefer Chasidim says. I actually once had, I remember back in the day, Nachal Yehudia, whoever remembers, used to jump in and go to a long thing of water. So I remember I jumped in, starting swimming, I don't know what it was 100 feet to the end. Somebody jumps in after, this big guy, and he can't swim. What he was doing jumping in there, I'm not quite sure. I run over and to get him, and I'm really, really struggling trying to save him. It was not pushing. But then the guy after him jumped in, and the two of us together, once I had a second hand, then I had a much easier time. We had a much easier time pulling the guy to the side. But yeah, so I guess once I had a second guy, I wasn't over the safer Hasidim over there. But Beseder. So weiter. So now let's ask ourselves a question for vaccines today. I'm going to start off with the understanding, working with the general medical field understanding, medical world understanding. I will bring up other opinions as we go, but we're going to start off with the general medical understanding, and we're going to ask ourselves, is one mechuyev to take the vaccine or not? Right? So,
which vaccine in particular?
So, yeah, it's another thing. Let's actually keep this conversation primarily. We'll hopefully expand it at the end, remind me. Well, let's keep it to the major vaccines that the poskim discussed, because I don't want to discuss additional vaccines that they didn't discuss. So I'm talking about the MMR vaccine, I'm talking about the polio vaccine, and I'm talking about the whooping cough vaccine. They've, over the recent years, added many more vaccines, which, for example, Rav Elyashiv, it's not fair to quote Rav Elyashiv on all the additional vaccines, because he wasn't talking about any of the additional vaccines. So I want to keep it as fair as can be. So we're going to talk about those major ones, and Rav Elyashiv certainly didn't discuss the COVID vaccine. So maybe we'll get to those afterwards, but let's keep it to the main family of primary vaccines. Yeah? So does one have a chiyuv? So I've seen many quote that one has a chiyuv because of nishmarta me'odis nafsh seichem, rak yishor melecha, lo yisam adam re'echa, maka, etc. Now, is that accurate? So, at the end of the day, today, for one individual who's asking the question, is there lots of mumps, measles, rubella, whooping cough, polio around today? There is not. I understand why there is not. We could discuss it in a second. But as of right now, is there a lot around? No, there is not a lot around. Those Issurim, definitely the race that we said is when there's a major sakanas nefashos in front of me. When a mediocre is the Rabbanon. Right now, there is not a big threat of any of those things. There happens to be measles right now. There is somewhat of an outbreak, so you could debate the measles point for little kids, whatever. But when we're not bisman outbreak, there's nothing to debate. That it's not a major, and even now, it's not pashut, definitely not pashut, but it is not a major threat right now. So to say that you have a chiyuv deraisa to do it, but you're allowed to eat a donut, it's very hard to explain why you're allowed to eat a donut, but you have a chiyuv deraisa to protect yourself from polio. Because the donut is probably worse. You have a greater chance of eating too many donuts to death than polio to death at this current point. So to use that as your reasoning I don't think it's very, very simple. Now you might want to say, hey, is it not fair for me to rely on everybody else's immunity in order to get there? All right, we'll discuss that. I'll get to that later. But to claim that you have to do it because sakanas nefashos, I think is a difficult claim, because is it really, I'm talking about a personal level, is it really your personal sakanas nefashos that you have to do to protect yourself? Is hard to believe, because it doesn't seem to be the threat around. Once again, if everybody said this, we might have problems in economy. I'm not denying that. But I'm just saying the individual who's asking the question. Fine. Next. Now, maybe one has to. The Radbaz says that you are not mechuyev to give up a limb to save somebody else's life. As the Sefer Hasidim said before, you're not mechuyev to risk your life in a major way. You have 50% chance of drowning to death. You're not mechuyev to do it to save somebody else's life. So maybe one can argue, which is very simple. It's very mefurish in those achronim, that a small act you have to do because lo yisalmad adam re'echa. You have to do a small act to save somebody else's life. You can't just let somebody die. So one may argue, and I've heard this argument, that one has to take the vaccine because it's a small act for you and it's going to save a life. The problem with this argument is that I don't see it, my taking a vaccine is going to save somebody's life. I am maskim. I do not think it's a large act. I do not think it's like giving up a limb, right? Or a 50% death possibility. That I'm maskim. Meaning it doesn't have the issue that it's giving too much. But does that really save a life? Yes, I agree. If everybody says like I'm going to say, then we might have problems working with general medical knowledge.
And your small effort combined with 100, 1,000 other people's effort.
Correct. My effort with 1,000 other people's effort might add up. That would add to something. But I'm just saying on a personal level, could you pull the card on me? You have to because lo yisam al adam re'echa. I don't think it's pashut to pull that card on me because I don't see somebody dying because I didn't take it. Now, when you're in outbreak time, measles, this, that, whatever, there's a little bit more to discuss, but it's still a difficult claim. But there's more to discuss in that scenario. But generally, to take whooping cough today, when there's no whooping cough, very rarely you hear anything about whooping cough, is a difficult, I don't see where I'm killing somebody today. Once again, I am agreeing with the point that if everybody would say it, we'll get to there. Okay. Next. So therefore, we haven't yet found a way to prove that I'm really chayav. Now, next. Right now I'm working first with the people that believe in the medical world of the safety of the vaccines, and they believe the medical world of the positive effect of vaccines, right? Is that person allowed to say, I don't want to give my kid a polio vaccine or MMR vaccine? Why? Because when I give my kid a vaccine, and I'll tell you this is true, usually, very often, the kid has fever, the kid's cranky, the kid's not feeling well, the kid doesn't like getting, nobody likes getting a shot in themselves, right? Kids don't like it, and they end up a little sick for a couple days sometimes. So why should I go and give my kid the MMR and the polio and all that type of stuff? Anyways, everybody else is giving it, and therefore, I believe the science that's causing the diseases not to be around, but I'm just going to rely on everybody else. And therefore, why not keep for my kid, let's say I believe that for my kid, my kid doesn't have a major risk of MMR, polio, etc. So therefore, I'll give my kid, I don't want my kid to get sick. Is one halachically allowed to say this? So the chayra, from a pure halachic standpoint, off the bat, I would say, why not? One l'chayra halachically could say this. However, it's probably a chasar in erelkeit, a chasar in yashrus, a chasar in be'el m'chaverai, for somebody to have that approach. But I don't actually, I have a difficult time pinpointing an Issur on somebody taking that approach. Because is it sakas fashas? No. So what exactly did he do wrong? So let's keep on going and find out. Now, the Maisa, how do the Poskim paskin? Do they paskin that there is a chiyuv to take a vaccine or not? So Rav Elyashiv says that since everybody else is doing it, since the Olam's doing it, you have no right not to take the vaccine, and you have to take a vaccine. That is what Rav Elyashiv says. Although the question over here is, it's not so clear what is the halachic basis that Rav Elyashiv's kind. I hear the mention kind of Rav Elyashiv, but Rav Elyashiv wasn't a big Baal Musar. He was much more of a Baal Halacha. Where is it coming from that Rav Elyashiv says there's a chiyuv to take a vaccine? So the Maisa, there, Rav Asher Weiss explains. Rav Asher Weiss, he goes into this. By the way, one of the things that you could enjoy having a Rav Asher Weiss who actually, it's not like you heard a shmua about what he holds. He writes these long shuvas. He clearly explains what his opinion is, and he clearly writes what all his reasonings are behind his opinion. It's much more of a mechaya to go through such a shita than all the shmuas that come out. Happens to be that's the shmua that Rav Yosef. He said there's lots of people that say Rav Yosef said it's a chiyuv to take the vaccine. It's just, but it's much more geschmack to have Rav Asher Weiss who spells it out. So how does Rav Asher Weiss come to the conclusion that there's a chiyuv to take a vaccine? So Zot Rav Asher Weiss, there is a Gemara in Sanhedrin, I believe it's Kuf Testament Beis, that quotes a medrash that says that the midas stoim was that everybody would steal from somebody a little bit. My little bit that I'm stealing is not a big deal. But after lots of people came and stole a little bit from the person, the guy was left with nothing. Right? So, what Dr. Rav Asher Weiss, anything that if everybody would do would end up in evil, would end up bad, therefore it's evil for the individual to do it. And therefore one has a chiyuv to get the vaccine. So that is what Rav Asher Weiss says. Now, Rav Asher Weiss has two chidushim there. Chiddush number one is he took a Gemara which is more agaditic of a Gemara, and he applied that Gemara for a halachic matter. Second chiddush of Rav Elyashiv is he took something which was monetary. Rav Asher Weiss, what did I say? Yeah, and Rav Asher Weiss, he took something which was monetary, and he applied it to something health related. So that was two jumps from the Gemara to his reality. The svara is there. The svara is glat. He's taking the same line of reasoning to say why it's usher to steal a little, and it's also over here to, take for yourself a little and not get it. Even though individually there's no effect in any major way by you not getting the vaccine. But if everybody would do it, it would lose the whole protection. So therefore, he applies that principle from Sanhedrin. He has a second case where he applies the principle. There's when you have a city, if most of the people want to build a protection wall, so the majority could force the minority that everybody in the city has to chip in for the wall. And even if you say, I don't think we need the wall, the majority could force it that everybody in the city has to chip in for that wall. So Dr. Rav Asher Weiss, just like the majority could force the minority to chip in and get that wall, so too the majority could force the minority to get the vaccine in order to protect everybody. Now this was more of a halachic Gemara, but the chiddush in the Rav Asher Weiss is he's taking a jump from a monetary matter to a matter of health, which a matter of giving up of your body, which once again is a jump. Once again, the svara seems to be pretty consistent, but it definitely is a jump to go from a monetary halacha to giving up of your potential body. So working with on that side of the opinions that say chiyuv outside of Rav Elyashiv, Rav Asher Weiss, to add on, we have a lot of American poskim that signed on to the Rav Sternbach, by the way. I saw somebody quoted Rav Sternbach as saying this as well, that there's a chiyuv. And there were a lot of American poskim around 2019 when it all came, a lot of hak in America, in New York. So you had Rav Belsky and Rav First from Chicago and Rav Reisman. So they came out as saying that there is a chiyuv. Now there is the camp of, we'll call it the Rav Shlomo Zalman camp. Rav Shlomo Zalman, he held that you should advise and you should encourage people to take the vaccine, but there is no way of making a chiyuv. Once again, I think it's based on a lot of the basic reasoning that I gave earlier, that it's very difficult to apply. There's no real major sakana in front of anybody, for any individual. There's no today major sakana in any way. Yes, it might be based on our group, herd immunity, whatever, but there's no major sakana today, and therefore you can't tell anybody they have a actual chiyuv. And if you can't tell me there's an actual chiyuv, therefore you can't say you're chayiv to do it. Now, we want it. It's good for society. So encourage everybody, advise everybody. But Dr. Rishon Zalman, there is no chiyuv. I assume there's a lot of poskim that go with this Rav Shlomo Zalman mahalach, but you can't find so many in print. The reason is neither side of this argument wants to bring the Rav Shlomo Zalman. That, it's advisable, but it's not a chiyuv. Everybody, the pro camp is busy throwing around the Rav Yashiv. And the anti-camp is going to be throwing around I'm going to say in a second, the Rav Makil Kotler and Shmuel Kamenetsky, who I'm going to get to in a minute. There's no big drive for people to throw out the Rav Shlomo Zalman camp of you really should and you should advise everybody to do it, but it's not a chiyuv, because that doesn't really fit anybody's major agenda. So that's just, I think, the reality of the world. But I think I'm assuming there's many more poskim that work with this Rav Shlomo Zalman type of mahalach. Okay, now, weiter. So, as I said, that's the reasoning of those that say there's a chiyuv. It is a chiddush from extending those gemaras. Fine. Now, but there is something to it. Now, there is another side of this story. We'll call it the anti-vax camp. So the anti-vax camp, we'll give a 1-minute explanation. The 1-minute explanation of the anti-vax camp is varying degrees in the anti-vax camp. Some say they all hold that the vaccine is very damaging to people to take, and the more mild version of the anti-vax camp will say that the negatives outweigh the positives. Meaning it's true that the vaccine was able to eradicate XYZ diseases, but it's so poisonous and bad for you that the negative outweighs the positive. Then there is a stronger degree of the anti-vax camp. We're mostly focusing on the major ones: MMR, polio, whooping cough, those guys. Yeah. Then there's the more extreme version in the anti-vax camp, which will say that they have the negative element, as we said before, and there actually is no positive. So what happened to all those diseases? So they disappeared for other reasons, better hygiene, natural events, whatever it is, and they claim that it just disappeared, but it's not because of the vaccines, and if we would stop taking the vaccines, the diseases won't come back. So that is the claim. Now, the obvious question against the anti-vax camp, just to give a little basic whatever details, is that 99% of the doctors and the medical bodies and the medical journals and the government agencies and the health agencies don't buy into that, and they say that vaccines are healthy. And the basic answer to that is that the pharmaceutical companies either pay off people or influence people to make it that everybody has to say that the vaccines are good for you, even though they're not. It pretty much is a big conspiracy theory that the pharmaceutical companies are making everybody say it's healthy, even though it's not healthy. So that is the theory of the anti-vax camp. Now, for more on this, check your local podcast, whatever it is, yeah? But more of that doesn't concern me. Okay. Now the question is, once again, and if you're going to go with this, you obviously are not going to want to take a vaccine, because that, once again, for all the reasons that we started in the beginning of this year, of the positive halachic and hashkafic reasons of protecting your health, so those would now tell you not to take a vaccine if you are part of that viewpoint. Okay, does halacha tell me who I need to follow? Does halacha tell me which camp I should view as truth? So there is a Gemara in Yuma that says we follow Roiv Roifim. We follow most of the doctors. And therefore, working with that Gemara, you would simply say, if most doctors say that you should vaccinate, then you should vaccinate. However, some argue, and the anti-vax camp will definitely argue this, that your average pediatrician, what does he know? He just reads a medical journal. He doesn't know what the truth is. He doesn't have the capacity to run a study, and therefore his opinion is not valid. It's not meaningful. And by the way, it's not meaningful. So maybe it could be true. There is something to that argument, but then it would just probably fall a level higher to Rove researchers, Rove medical journals, Rove medical bodies. What do they say? Just by the way, a side point, I'm just going to throw it out there. Maybe this is more for a podcast point. The fact that you're going to tell me that a lot of the organizations put politics and profits in front of personal health, I could hear that somewhat. I think there are a lot of people you could have a chashad on a lot of people that they put politics or profits above personal health. What I find hard to swallow and hard to believe is that the fact that you have everybody in on this, you have Trump, Biden, Putin, the Ayatollah, and you have the World Health Organization, the CDC of all these countries, and everybody, you have the Senate, the Congress of the Republicans and the Democrats, and everybody's all together, and they're all finally found something to agree on, and they're all in on it together. That I find hard to, and nobody was able to break it, and it lasted so many years.
They're all controlled by a shadow government.
So maybe, I don't know, that for me sounds a little too much, but I do believe, once again, the first part of it I could hear, that people are putting profits. The people are putting profits and politics in front of personal health. That part I could hear. But the fact that it's so widespread, that for me is a little bit much to swallow. But whatever, it's not my point.
Also, no? So the planes will also do that, but if it's a crash, it's not
Correct.
going to work. Like, it's a vida gluye. Like, they can't...
Eventually it has to come out.
Yeah.
But they'll claim it comes out and it's suppressed, whatever. Okay. But as I said, the more of that is for your local podcast. Pick your podcast. Oh, and also one line that I hate, just want to put it, you have to do your own research. The own research claim is just baloney because it depends. Yeah, if I go to this podcast, I'm going to do my own research and it's going to say it's all one big conspiracy theory. And if I listen to that podcast and I do my research, then it's all MS Moshe Messinai. So I don't have possibility of doing my own research in that. I can use my own logic, basic logic, but my own real research into it is on both sides, not a reality. Okay, so this Gemara says, follow Roiv Roivim. Whether you want to say that Roiv pediatricians or you want to say Roiv medical bodies, that seems to indicate you follow the Roiv medical knowledge. And if you want to count the natural health doctors, I'm okay with counting them as well as opinions. I don't think you necessarily need a medical degree 100% to be considered a healer, perhaps. But anyways, it's still quite clear that Roiv organizations, Roiv people that done any legitimate studies, are all saying that it's in the best interest to take the vaccine. So therefore, the Chayra, that Gemara would point us to it being a chiyuv to follow that side of taking the vaccine. However, is that halacha? Is that Gemara la halacha? So there's Shulchan Aruch on Yom Kippur. What is it? Taf Reshut Ches, I think it is. Discussing Hilchos Yom Kippur. And in Sif Gimel, it says, but some people look at Sif Gimel, not Sif Daled. There's Sif Gimel and Sif Daled, which at first glance seem like an absolute stira. So it's very hard I'm going to tell you what they both say, and it's very hard to take this. Number one, there is a guy who is Chol on Yom Kippur. One doctor says he needs to eat. Two doctors say he doesn't need to eat. The halacha is you follow two doctors and you do not feed him. We follow the Roiv. And we follow the Roiv, even though his life is at risk, but we follow the Roiv, we do not feed him. So that shows you that we follow Roiv doctors. And a lot of people quote that Sif. But then if you look, the next Sif Dalet, it says something that seems like a contradiction. If you have two doctors that say that he needs to eat, and you have 100 doctors that say he does not need to eat, you feed him. Because by Bikuach Nefesh, we're not going to follow the Roiv. Now, what just happened? Because the simon before, you followed the Roiv, the two doctors that said to eat, against the one doctor. And now you're not, and if you do a little statistics, it should be the opposite. So what's going on? How are you miyashiv this stira in the Shulchan Aruch? Do we pass like this Gemara or do we not pass like this Gemara? So there's more than one way of being miyashiv this stira. But I think this is the pashtus. When you have a Issur, eating on Yom Kippur, against a das yochid, medical opinion, So you follow the roiv, not to do the Issur, against a das yachid, who says that he should eat. However, once you have a Issur going against a substantial minority, 2 doctors is already a shita. It's not a das yachid, it's a shita. So once you have a substantial, even if it's a minority, we're going to push away the Issur when it comes to sakanas nefashos, and we're going to take heed to the minority opinion. We're going to be choishish for the minority opinion. Now let's try applying that to our vaccine shayla, whether we should take the vaccine or not. So, number 1, first of all, I don't buy that taking the question of should I take the vaccine is a real, what we call in halacha pekuach nefesh, either way. Meaning, I don't believe anybody's dying from taking the vaccine, and I don't believe that one person taking the vaccine is probably going to save somebody's life either, on an individual basis. Communal basis is a different story, but on an individual basis. So I don't actually think we are really dealing with pekuach nefesh here, on a full stance. Maybe if you look at it globally and you step back at the community, then you're going to get into pekuach nefesh questions. But as the individual, I don't think we're really into a pekuach nefesh question. I know that is debatable, and I agree there's what to debate. Next, the whole shayla was when we don't push away Issur in order because there's a minority opinion, we're going to go with the minority opinion and push away the Issur. Over here, if you're going to call it pekuach nefesh, and you call it pekuach nefesh on both sides because he's claiming the vaccine kills you and he's claiming the disease kills you, right? So you're going to have pekuach nefesh on both sides, the chayur that will fall back to following the roiv. The whole thing was we push away Issur to be choishish for the miyat. But if you're going to tell me that there's pekuach nefesh on both sides, potentially, so therefore, we're going to be back to our original standpoint of following the roiv. And that will tell us to follow the roiv. So I would say the pashtus is one has to follow roiv doctors, and that's what Chazal should say to do. There is other ways of learning this, of being miyashiv the stira. The stira you could be miyashiv the stira in the Shulchan Aruch by saying, when it comes to anything related to pekuach nefesh, you're always choishish for a substantial miyat. One person's a das yachid, but whenever there's a substantial miyat, so then you're going to always follow the das yachid. One could suggest that. I don't think it's the pashtus, but one could suggest that. That's the way. And therefore, they're going to claim that this pekuach nefesh things, taking the vaccine kills you. And therefore, that's what they'll claim. And therefore, maybe you don't have to take it. The Maisa. So I already said the opinions that say you're chayav to take the vaccine, the opinions that say you're encouraged. But I got to be fair and I got to be honest. There's opinions that are going to say that you don't have to, which are, we have Makil Cutler.
You have to, you're not, or you shouldn't.
Oh, so they're not clear. They are written very vague. I don't know what they tell people. I heard all different things about what they say in private. I don't know. But definitely what they wrote was very vague. I couldn't figure out whether they were trying to, to me it looked vague on purpose. That, they definitely said you can't tell somebody that they have to take the vaccine. And that is, there was a letter that came out in 2019. Shmuel Kamenetsky, by the way, just to point out, it's pretty much mostly American, big Rabbanim of America that came out this way. I didn't see much on the Israeli side.
I saw a whole journal recently.
Yeah.
Plus from here, no?
Plus from here? Yeah. Oh, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, by the way, is quoted on both sides. So he's puzzled for this over here, because both sides quote Reb Chaim Kanievsky as being on their side, so that doesn't count. So from what I've seen, my research, Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky, Reb Makil Kotler, Reb Matis Yos Salman, what's the name, Reb Usman, the one of South Fallsburg, Reb Usman. So they all write that that one is allowed to decide that they don't want to take the vaccine, and you can't force them to take it. Okay. The next question, which it gets into, is could I say that you are not accepted to my school if you do not take a vaccine? Or you're out of my school if you do not take a vaccine? Is a school allowed to do this? So, I'll tell you what everybody says, and then I'll tell you my opinion. Rav Elyashiv says you're allowed to say you're not allowed you could not let a kid into school because he doesn't take a vaccine. And working with that, there's a lot of the American poskim, which were first from Chicago, Rav Belsky, Rav Reisman. They all said you could tell the kid you're out of school if you don't take the vaccine. They wrote a letter in 2019. At the same time, there was a letter that came out from Rav Shmuel Kanetsky, Rav Makil Cutler, and Rav Matis Yosef Solomon that said you are not allowed to not accept the kid for not taking the vaccine, and you have to accept them in the school.
That's all the policy. I checked this out. That's the policy in all the schools in Lakewood.
Right? It's very hard. If you're in Lakewood, it's very hard to go against Rav Makil and Rav Matis Yosef. It's very hard to go against Rav Makil and Rav Matis Yosef if you're in Lakewood. Fine.
These are all letters.
Letters. They're in English. There are letters in Hebrew and in English. Fine. So, Lemaisa, what do I think? So to me, I think for a in-town style school, I think it's a davar pashut. I mean, offer any tachas raglei and whatever, blah, 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 blah. I'm not here to put on my boxing gloves against whatever. But the way that I see the sugya, I think it's a davar pashut. For an in-town school, nobody says boo-hoo or has any problem if you don't accept the kid because the father wears a blue shirt. If the father doesn't wear a hat, for sure you don't have to accept him. Now, why isn't it a problem to not accept the kid whose father wears a blue shirt or wears a hat? Because we have our style in our yeshiva, in our cheder, our Beis Yaakov, whatever it is, and we're following the style and the type who wears hats and doesn't wear blue shirts. So nobody has any problem with them not accepting somebody for those reasonings. So if that's the case, that those are the parameters where you're allowed to decide whether in society you're allowed to accept or not. So certainly over here, somebody could say, listen, our school, we follow the psak of Rav Elyashiv and Rav Belsky. Oh, you're not working with the psak of Rav Elyashiv? Well, we're the type of school that follows Rav Elyashiv and Rav Belsky. If you can make that stand on blue shirts, you can't make that stand on poskim. Kal v'chomer, you can make that stand on poskim. And a further kal v'chomer, which is a much stronger kal v'chomer, is these parents, whether you believe it or don't believe it is not the point. I'm not attacking you for not believing. But these are a group of parents who have sacrificed by having their kids sick for 2 days after getting the vaccine, having fever, cranky, whatever it is, after getting a vaccine. And maybe even put themselves in minor risk potentially, which is obviously debatable, by taking this vaccine, in order that we have a protected circle. So why should I have to let in somebody who's going to ruin that protective circle? Because once again, these vaccines aren't 100% protective. They're only 90% protective. So we all gave of ourselves to make this protective circle. Me'akatesi, I have to let somebody else in who isn't maskim to join us. I'm not saying he's necessarily a bad person. I said in the beginning, the person that believes the science and decides I just want to ride on everybody else, that's a lack of erlichkeit. To say, I believe, but I don't want my kid to be sick for 2 days. Anyways, it's not a problem because he's not going to get it anyways because you guys all don't have it. That's a lack of erlichkeit. The guy who is part of the anti-vax belief, so it's not a lack of erlichkeit, he believes that's protecting his kids. But still, if you're not part of my camp, and you're not, just like you might wear a blue shirt and I wear a white shirt, you're not part of my camp, that's the reason that I could get away with not accepting your kid. And I think it's crazy to say that I'm allowed to say a blue shirt is a problem, but I can't say that this is a problem. This makes much more sense to be a problem. And obviously for a camp, I would say the same thing. A camp could say that same policy. However, when it comes to an out-of-town school, where, let's say, this is the one yeshiva in town, so, and once again, generally in those places which are out of town and have one yeshiva per town, they'll accept the kid with the blue shirt and the kid that doesn't, his father doesn't wear a hat. And it's more of a inclusive shita in general. So then I would say the school has to estimate the situation and make a decision. If by allowing these 10 kids that don't vaccinate, there's going to be 20 kids that are going to say, forget it, their parents are going to say, we're sending them to public school. We're not sending them to a school where it's dangerous. And there are people that don't vaccinate. So you have to go with the numbers, whatever's more. But if it's just that, people want them vaccinated and there's 10 kids that don't vaccinate and they want to send, l'chayra, I'm not saying this is mukhrak, but l'chayra, I would think that the out-of-town school probably has a responsibility to accept them, and it's because the Maisa, they do have poskim that they're relying on. So once again, I think according to the way that I learned the sugya, l'chayra, you should get a vaccine. The way that Roiv poskim seem to come out is that you either are chayev or should get a vaccine. However, I think it's wrong for calling somebody a reitzeach and calling somebody a murderer or whatever who doesn't get the vaccine, when the Maisa, there are significant Rabbanim on that side, even though it's not how I learned the sugya, but there are significant people on that side.
Science. So
Huh?
If you hold it wrong in science, so then people are right, no?
Once again, if they believe that, and they have Rabbanim that say they have a right to believe that, if a Mikhail Cutler and Shmuel Kametsky are telling you you have a right to believe that, and they believe that for whatever reason, so I don't know. I don't think I call them a reitzkim, but I definitely could say you're not allowed in my school. You're not allowed in my camp. I don't know. Klapi me or a reitzeach. If klapi me or a reitzeach, but once again, I don't think I think there's also one of these issues.
The same thing that they hold the Maisa. They wanted the policy. Those that get a vaccine can't stay in the school.
So if they have a school like that, and they believe, once again, if they believe,
they do believe.
Yeah, but if you got a vaccine, you're not dangerous.
If they believe,
I understand that, but because we want it, you have many schools. A lot of them say it's not. You're throwing out kids, so we'll take the kids. We'll have a school.
yeah. If a school wants to make that policy, once again, if it's to attack the other side, that doesn't sound right. But if it's because they have a concern, or they're like, you don't hold of our poskim, if that's where it's coming from, then yeah.
A lot of these sides, they say the roitzim on their own kids.
Correct. Once again,
the last few months, like a lot of kids died here in this country.
Correct.
So,
So that's how I started.
Said, maybe a Rav can make a toast in science.
Right, and a konami. But listen, if somebody goes and he is a believer of this, I think you could call him an idiot if you want, but you're not a ritzech.
Why not? If you put your kid in danger.
Yeah, I don't understand these people.
So I think once again, if
I learned the sugya, I hold their rights to him. What do you mean I can't say?
Maybe copy you, but I don't know if you should call him a ritzech. If that's what he, in honesty, came to that conclusion, and his Rav. And his Rav.
Right. I showed him the evidence. What if I go and lose it? Nah, it's baloney, it causes autism. That's what they say, by the way. They say you're the ritzah because you're causing kids to live a life with autism is also ritzah.
My as I started with my preface, I think I want to view this as a halachical topic without the hargashas and without the whatever. And when I view it as a thing, I say, listen, like I see in other areas of halacha, that I've come to the conclusion that I think these people are wrong. But at the end of the day, if they came to an honest conclusion, even if they were wrong, and they came to an honest conclusion, and they have Rabbanim on their side, so
Rambam said people are also for not. They also.
Yeah, okay, but we could debate this. I would say to take our emotional charge a little bit out of it, and try to convince them if possible.
These songs that came out recently, Bronsdorfer came out. I thought he was getting the other side. He said your car, if you get not vaccinated, your kids are covered. I think he had 5 kids in his community that died.
Yeah. So this is actually something that I said in the preface, and I'll add again. Yeah, I'm gonna add this again. As I started, I was saying we were talking at the time when there is no outbreak. When there is an outbreak, then one could claim that there actually is you are being a mazik or a ritzech on others. When it's a time that there isn't an outbreak, it might be logical and smart to take the vaccine. But in a calm time, to claim that somebody's being a ritzech during a calm time, so that is very difficult. When you're in the time of the outbreak and people still aren't doing it, then there's much more reason to make the ritzech claim. So that was a preface in the beginning, but it's okay. Okay, but I think with that we end. And once again, everybody try to do what's right.